Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today. My name is Mary Ann Snow, and I'm the CEO and founder of Sophia. What we do at Sophia is we work with clients to help them implement remote work solutions and increase productivity in dispersed teams. Not very surprising, we've been getting a lot of calls lately because lots and lots of people are trying to figure out what's coming next in the workplace. So we're going to take this time today. I'm going to share some information with you about a pandemic work from home survey that we completed during the month of May and June that will give you some indicators about what's happening with your employees when they're thinking about remote work and what type of workplace trends we're seeing that you need to consider as you pull together your plans for what's next, not only post-COVID, but post-2021. This is going to give you a little bit of insight into some of the trends that we think are going to be in everybody's mind as they think about moving forward, but also are going to be a big topic of conversation, not only in the HR community, but also in the C-suite, because executives are starting to rethink how they're constructing business continuity plans, as well as building in resilience in the event that COVID lasts longer than we think. And we're also seeing this become a major source of conversation as managers who have never managed remote work teams before are now trying to figure out ways how they're going to sustain this. And so they're really kind of struggling. And so companies are faced with managing this much longer than they thought. So what does this mean for the average workplace of the future? And we're talking about organizations. We have conversations every day with organizations that have never engaged in remote work. Yes, they probably had people who might have worked while they were traveling, and they certainly had exposure to things like conference calls, and they might even work in dispersed teams where an organization has multiple locations and had to do business with folks that they couldn't necessarily meet with face to face. But, you know, for the vast majority of organizations that exist today, folks have had exposure to some sort of remote work in different forms. So it's not completely unusual to a vast majority of folks. And yet in the COVID situation, whether you had experience with remote work, whether you didn't have experience with remote work, whether you showed up at an office every day, suddenly you found yourself a remote professional in an extreme way. So the first thing that we like to tell people is that what's happening right at this particular point in time with COVID isn't typical remote work. This is really an enforced workplace shutdown. And we wanted to find out what kind of lessons people were learning and also what was happening, because this is a unique opportunity to study remote work and think about how it impacts productivity and how it impacts job satisfaction and what kind of impacts it was having on people's day-to-day life. And so what we discovered with our pandemic work from home survey that we conducted in May and June of 2020 was that we had a high degree of people who were very, very interested in talking to us about their experience. And we got over 750 responses across all working age group, income levels, and job positions, and gave us a lot of insight into how people are feeling and what's happening with them today. The long and short of our survey, what it proved was that the COVID experience absolutely, without a doubt, and emphatically proved that remote works. And people who were working from home on a full-time basis experienced increased satisfaction levels, they increased productivity, and the more people who are doing it and the more people who are doing it over an extended period of time, the greater the satisfaction, the greater productivity, and the more people like it. The other primary piece of information that was underscored in our survey was that most employees want more work from home in the future. About 80% have indicated that they're interested in working from home past the COVID time period. So HR departments, senior executives in their companies, managers and supervisors are going to hear from their people that remote work has to be an option for the workplace of the future. 65% are willing to come into an office on a part-time basis, 1 to 2 days a week, but the largest productivity gains and satisfaction gains were realized by employees who were working from home on a full-time basis. This means that the pressure to offer some sort of a remote work alternative is going to increase. And it means that companies that have never offered this option before, particularly for folks who have been able to make that transition, folks that are not in customer facing positions, because obviously there are some positions that don't lend themselves to remote work, and these are folks that might be in direct service roles, they might be in customer facing roles, they might be in essential business roles. So our survey was focused on all of the other positions which allowed people to be able to work full-time without any interruption, and to be able to not only maintain their productivity, but in many cases see productivity gains as a result of their work from home situations. Those are the people that we're going to focus on today, and these are the folks that we're really reaching out to and speaking to on a routine basis. You're going to feel the pressure to implement some sort of a remote work solution because your employees are going to demand it. COVID has proven that it's an efficacious and a productive model. And we're seeing from an HR perspective and also from an operations perspective, not only the employee satisfaction gains, the ability to be able to position yourself as a employer of choice for a high degree of professionals in the future, but it's also something that is creating real cost savings for corporations, organizations, any sort of company that is integrating these solutions into their strategic plans for the future. So what are we asking people? What are we recommending that people do right now? And when you're thinking about the workplace of the future, what are the strategic considerations that you have to keep in mind? First, COVID is not going away anytime soon. And so making sure that you're using this brief window wisely. And for those of you in COVID hotspots, making sure that you're thinking about how to identify strengths and weaknesses of your current remote plan. You might be in the midst of your COVID experience, or you might actually be in a bit of a wane in your COVID experience. Regardless of where you're at, making sure that you have put your emergency plans in place, that they're up and running, but that you're also using those short-term windows when things are a little quieter to identify the strengths and weaknesses of your current remote work plan, and then get problems fixed as fast as possible so that you can maintain business continuity and keep your people as productive as possible. Start training your existing managers now, because our survey indicates they're the biggest barrier to remote work success. How people were treated during their pandemic experience was the deciding factor of their satisfaction levels and their productivity levels. Managers that have been given skill training in how to manage remote teams, dispersed teams, how to support folks during this time, and also how to position them for good productivity on a day-to-day basis, showed the highest level of productivity gains and the highest level of satisfaction levels amongst their team. The other recommendation that we have for staffing groups as well as HR teams and operations leaders who are looking to add to their staff is working together as a group to build some sort of a short-term plan for integrating new hires so that you can engage them fast, you can integrate them well, and you can really um, look for ways to very specifically build engagement tools into your processes that will allow you to be able to hold on to these people that you're bringing into your workplace right now, because they may be your best assets in the future, because this is the only thing that they've known, which means for them remote work is pretty much the watchword of the day. Once you have those short-term plans in place and you're starting to get your managers the skill-based training that they need in order to move things forward, remember you're looking at what does the workplace of the future look like. You're going to have to plan for the long term, and that long-term plan means adjusting your strategies to incorporate some sort of remote work, a tactical plan, operations plan in some form going forward. That means you're going to need a multidiscipline team to address this company-wide, because it's going to impact every area of your business, and you're going to have to plan for this. That means identifying how each area of your business is going to be impacted by remote work. And even if you have some roles within your organization that are direct customer facing, they may have a supervisor that's remote. They might be working within dispersed teams that are unable to meet face to face. So even if you have positions in your organization that still have to maintain some sort of a physical presence, we guarantee you're also going to have individual roles within your organizations that will benefit from a remote work plan. And so pulling that team together, thinking about this strategically, creating that multidiscipline approach, and prepping yourself for this has to be part of your strategy. Any good strategy touches everything. And whether we're talking about daily operations, whether we're talking about team productivity measures, management practices, service delivery, customer interactions, business development, finances, technical needs, security, as well as talent management, all of these areas of your operation will be impacted by whatever plans you develop. They're certainly impacted by things in the short term, and these should be things that you're assessing for lessons learned, as well as risk, as well as the plans you have to keep that engagement going forward. But from a long-term perspective, making sure that you're pulling together operational procedures, policies, workflows, and really integrating remote work, a remote work thought process for every part of your operation is going to be critical going forward. We're not only talking about business continuity considerations, we're also talking about team resilience, and we're talking about positioning yourself so that you can take advantages of the market opportunities that this is offering you. If you're first taking on first mover advantage, if you're doing this ahead of your competition, appreciate that this is going to position you to be able to capture business that you might not have been able to capture before, and put you at the forefront, the real vanguard of what's coming next. And regardless of what's thrown at you, you're going to be in a much better position than your competition if you have integrated these things into your planning process going forward. So get started because the clock is ticking. And that means, assess your current state and fix whatever you can short term. It also means building remote work into your strategy, both on the short term basis, but also in the long term basis. Seeking outside expertise whenever possible, and really bringing people into your organization to work with you so that you can build the strategies you need and you've got a broader perspective, particularly if your organization has never engaged in remote work before. When you're designing your roadmap for implementing remote work and integrating remote work into your organization, remember, get the right people involved. And this might be internal experts who have engaged in remote work within your organization in some capacity before, but it also may mean bringing in folks from multidisciplinary areas so that you can cover all your bases. Because remember, this is going to impact every part of your organization. So you have to get a multidisciplinary team as part of the process. And then don't feel like you have to incorporate every single suggestion right off the bat. Very often we're giving people the recommendation to take a phased approach. What do you need to do in the short term? And then take it one step at a time. If this is new for you, if you've never incorporated these types of considerations into your operations before, if you're not sure what positions are best suited for remote work long term, if you have concerns from a risk or a security point of view, then be methodical, be planful, but get the right experts at the table who can help you think this through so that you're going to be able to do this and do this with integrity. Every single piece of this has change management aspects built into it. You're going to have to help your current employees through difficult transitions. And while your employees may be enjoying the fruits of their new remote work lifestyle, many of your managers and supervisors are struggling. Your existing managers or supervisors now have to really consider new types of ways to manage to productivity metrics, to shift their management style in a way that is going to allow them to be a little more collaborative, to allow individuals on their teams to take much more liberties to manage their own work process. This, remote work is not a situation that lends itself well to micromanagement. And that may be a departure for folks who are completely convinced that the only way that they can ensure productivity is with line of sight and more traditional modes of management. Those things just simply won't work in a remote work environment, nor do they work in a dispersed team environment. And so the more that you can position your folks so that they understand the differences in how this workforce is motivated, how they're engaged, how they're measured, how they are coached, how they're managed, how they're led, the more that we can help your folks get into this new environment and be successful, the better. And then how are you bringing people into your organization so that you can incorporate those folks? Because remember, you don't have to convince them. That's just, your current situation is just the way it is. They're going to appreciate that freedom, and yet they're going to struggle if you don't have good processes in place to integrate those folks and get them involved, get them engaged, and help them feel part of your culture right now. So prepared for that phased approach, take it one step at a time, but that means that you have to have that universal roadmap, that holistic and that really corporate executive roadmap, which will allow you to be able to think of the multidiscipline considerations for each phase as you go. And then prepare that change plan so that it is all about communication, it's all about cultural adaptation, it's all about the pivot, the transformation work that has to happen to help your folks not only feel comfortable if their legacy employees, existing employees who have been used to a different way of working, but they can also incorporate folks who are coming into your organization as your organization continues to change and grow. Don't forget to budget for maintenance and that transformation process, not only during the phases, but over time. Once these new workflows, these new processes, these new operational frameworks are in place, then you're going to have to maintain them because now they're going to be part of your culture. That's going to take a little bit more effort up front because remember, this will be new for everyone. But you're going to find that not only is this going to give you more productivity and more employee satisfaction over time, but you're going to find that this is going to be a revenue neutral position or even a cash positive position because as you move to these new models, it'll give you a chance to assess your current office situation and really kind of think about your brick and mortar presence in the future. So, thanks so much for coming to talk to us today. We're available for questions. We love to have conversations about this topic because clearly this is something that we have a big passion about. At Sophia, this is what we do on a full-time basis. We actually work with clients and help them to operationalize remote work and dispersed team productivity solutions. But with our sister project, the Remote Nation Institute, we're working hard to study remote work, think about remote work, and reimagine what remote work looks like in the future.